This is a story that sounds like something out of a twisted crime novel, but it's not fiction. It's the chilling reality of a mother who crossed every line a parent could ever cross. A story that will make you question how far someone can go when their desperation outweighs any moral compass. A mother, in the state of Florida, tried to sell her own daughter for just $400. How does a mother, the one person who should protect their child at all costs, end up making such a horrifying decision? What leads a parent down a path that so many can't even begin to understand? This is a tale of betrayal, exploitation, and a cold, calculating act of cruelty that no one could have ever predicted. Buckle up because this story will leave you questioning the very nature of humanity. Stay tuned to find out how this unimaginable tragedy unfolded. It was a quiet afternoon in Florida, the kind of day where nothing unusual seemed to happen. But behind the closed doors of a modest home, something unspeakable was brewing. A mother, in her mid-30s, sat on the couch, eyes scanning her phone. To the outside world, she looked like any other parent, tired, perhaps overwhelmed by life's challenges, but nothing to raise any alarms. Her name was Sarah, and no one ever suspected that her life, and more tragically the life of her 9-year-old daughter, was about to spiral into a nightmare. Sarah had her problems, money struggles, a broken relationship, the pressures of life weighing down on her. But like so many others, she had managed to hold it together, barely. What people didn't know was that Sarah had been pushed to a breaking point. There are some lines in life that, when crossed, can never be undone. And for Sarah, she was about to cross one of the most horrifying lines imaginable, attempting to sell her own flesh and blood. Sarah's desperation had reached an all-time high. She didn't know where to turn or how to fix her problems. At that moment, a thought crossed her mind, one that she probably never would have entertained under different circumstances. But the pressure, the mounting bills, the hopelessness, it all clouded her judgment. She needed money. Fast. She found someone willing to listen. Someone who had offered her an amount of cash that seemed like an escape, a lifeline, $400. A price for a child. Sarah's own daughter, whom she should have loved and protected, had now become nothing more than a commodity to her. It's hard to imagine how someone could make such a decision. How a mother could look at her child, her own blood, and think that offering her up for $400 was a solution. But Sarah found a man, a stranger, through online contacts, someone who had offered a sum of money in exchange for the young girl. The details were murky, but the intention was clear. Sarah was willing to go through with it. On the agreed-upon day, the man arrived. He wasn't a stranger in the traditional sense. He had a track record. Well known for being involved in shady dealings, someone who had ties to a dark underground world that most people would never want to know about. But to Sarah, he was someone who could give her the money she so desperately needed. The man met Sarah in a parking lot, a location that seemed innocuous enough to avoid any suspicion. They exchanged a few words, some pleasantries, before the man handed Sarah the $400 in cash. What followed next was nothing short of horrifying. Sarah led her daughter out to the car. The young girl, innocent and unaware of the evil intentions unfolding, followed her mother obediently. She had no idea that the woman she trusted more than anyone in the world was about to betray her in the most unforgivable way possible. As they reached the man's car, something shifted. Perhaps it was the child's instinct. Perhaps it was the feeling that something was wrong, but the little girl became hesitant. It was then that Sarah hesitated too. She began to realize the gravity of what she was about to do, the irreversible damage. Maybe the mother had convinced herself that she was doing this for some greater good, for a way out of her misery, but deep down, she had to know she was wrong. For a moment, the deal faltered. But then, the man spoke. In a twist of fate, the mother and daughter were not alone in the parking lot. Someone had been watching. A witness, an observant bystander who had no idea what was going on at first, but something about the scene didn't sit right with them. They saw the mother and daughter, they saw the handoff of cash, and they saw the child's nervous demeanor. It didn't take long for the observer to recognize that something terrible was happening. The bystander immediately called the authorities, whispering in a panicked voice that something was wrong. The authorities arrived just as Sarah was about to get into the man's car with her daughter. The police had been tipped off just in time, and they quickly moved in. The situation was tense, and Sarah, upon realizing what was happening, panicked. She tried to make a run for it, but there was no escaping what she had done. The officers detained her, their hands grabbing her arms and pulling her away from the situation she had created. The man, who had been ready to leave with the child, was arrested as well. But it was Sarah, the one who had given up her daughter for a few $100s, who would bear the most responsibility for this tragic moment. When the police investigated, they learned just how far Sarah's desperation had gone. It wasn't just about the money, it was about her losing touch with everything she once held dear. The police found that Sarah had been struggling for months, perhaps even longer. Financial troubles, relationship issues, emotional instability, these were all factors that led her to make the unthinkable decision. But nothing could excuse what she had done. Her daughter, thankfully, was unharmed. She was taken into protective custody, removed from the immediate danger, and placed into the care of a foster family. Her world had been turned upside down, but she was safe. Sarah was charged with attempted human trafficking, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit a crime. Her actions were seen as a betrayal of the most basic, human instinct, a mother's duty to protect her child. The community was left in shock. How could a mother, someone who was supposed to care for and nurture her child, commit such an unforgivable act? And the question remained, what drove her to make such a dark? As Sarah's trial approached, the media storm surrounding the case only grew. News outlets from across the country covered the trial, unable to comprehend how a mother could attempt to sell her daughter. The courtroom was packed with curious onlookers and journalists, all trying to piece together how someone could fall so far into darkness. In court, Sarah's defense was that she was struggling, emotionally and financially. But that defense fell flat when the facts were laid bare. There was no excuse for what she had done. The community, the jury, and even the judge struggled to understand how a mother could reach this point. In the end, Sarah's life was forever changed by one decision, the decision to betray the person she was supposed to love the most. Her daughter's life was forever changed as well, but thanks to the quick actions of a concerned bystander and the police, she was spared from a fate no child should ever endure. But the question lingers, how does a mother get to the point where she is willing to sell her child for money? What drives someone to such an extreme? The tragedy of this story is not just the attempt to sell a child, it's the larger question of desperation, of brokenness, and the overwhelming power of hopelessness. Thank you for watching. If you found this story shocking, please like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories.